This is going to be a very important week for South Africa. We're going to see the release of PPI and CPI, but really and truly all eyes will be on Mboweni later this week, right?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Siobhan. All eyes are on this week medium-term budget policy statement from the Minister of Finance. This follows the June special adjustment budget, and we're really expecting the Minister to highlight progress on the expenditure cuts which were outlined to try and stabilize debt to GDP, which is projected to breach over 87% this year.
So basically what you're talking about is we have 3 budgets in 1 year rather than 2, and I know that I find that 2 are really quite taxing. However, there is a lot that is lying on this. We've got the international community looking at our debt metrics, as well as the local investment community really taking a lot of attention on this. So, what do we think is going to happen?
So just to recap, going back to June's special adjustment budget, the minister highlighted several things, key being the expenditure cuts required to stabilize debt to GDP. He also laid bare the impact of the COVID-induced lockdown on the economy, and thereby resulting in a 3 or 4 tax revenue shortfall. So we're expecting some update on that, and from our side, I must admit that we see minimal downside risks to this year's tax revenue shortfall, but we are concerned about the outer years in terms of the tax revenue outlook. It seems too optimistic, and we think that there's definitely going to be some disappointment there, and hence undermining the fiscal consolidation measures. I think what's also interesting is going to be the expenditure cuts. What's your take on what was penciled in terms of expenditure cuts?
So, well, there wasn't much detail, was there? We were basically, the special adjustment budget gave us detail on what to expect for this year. How government was going to deal with this unprecedented shock that was emanating from the spread of COVID-19. What we have been told is that they want to have additional cuts relative to the budget that was presented in February to start bringing our debt to GDP trajectory to stabilization. But they haven't given us details, so we think that they probably aren't going to be able to cut 230 billion rand from planned expenditure over the next 2 years. This is just it's a big ask, and potentially can be really dangerous for the economy in a way. It can actually do the opposite of what is needed. We need our economy to grow, to increase revenue, to increase the base on which to build the economy. And if you do this massive shock, it's going to actually do the complete opposite. However, there are areas for consolidation, and it's really just about taking a more measured approach to it. So yeah, I think it's more about really caring about how this plays out, not just in terms of the numbers, but also in terms of how it's going to impact South Africa's people.
So from what I gather is that on the tax revenue side, we're going to see some disappointment, especially in the outer years. And then in terms of the cuts, they seem unattainable. But we do think that there will be some sort of cuts also tabled, but it won't be as aggressive as was presented in the special adjustment budget. So I think taking everything together, it means that we're likely to see wider deficits than what was penciled in the special adjustment budget, and that debt to GDP does not stabilize in line with what was presented in the active scenario. So which means that our debt trajectory continues to increase, which is a major fiscal concern, right? But I think where the Minister of Finance can then bring credibility to the fiscus is for him to take a more measured and prudent approach, and to focus on stabilizing debt over a longer period, let's say 6 to 10 years. In your view, what are some of the risks to the fiscal outlook we could see at this special adjustment budget?
I mean, we obviously are concerned about the wage negotiations. These are ongoing, and so, that could curtail the amount of savings that have been envisioned already by National Treasury. And also, should COVID remain a kind of a out there for longer risk, there is a good chance that you're going to see, economies having to shut down at least partially, as you're seeing up in the north as COVID infections increase. And this is then going to slow our recovery, our economic recovery, which then has even worse implications in terms of revenue collection than we are already envisioning. So I think it's going to be a fine balancing act, but I think there is something that can be done which makes sense rather than which is designed to make an international community happy, but not necessarily realistically achievable.